London Sperm Bank, we help a huge number of families. What makes the London Sperm Bank different is that since we set it up, we have a catalogue of donors, and it means that families are empowered to make the choice themselves. They've got a great array of people to look at. The donors themselves are asked to give small pen sketches so that the recipient can see what sort of person they are.
My name's Kelly.
And I'm Lisa.
And we're both mums to Lennon. We chose to use the London Sperm Bank because we both decided that we wanted to start a family.
It was quite important that we were accepted as a couple and not one of us being treated.
Paris may have its own nudist park by next summer if Green Party proposals to introduce a designated area for those wishing to strip it all off is approved. While the French are known for their open-mindedness to sex and nudity, France being the first country to open a naturist resort in Europe in 1950, options for parading in your birthday suit have been surprisingly limited in the country's capital. That may be about to change, however, as the Green Party of Paris prepare to table a motion at next week's meeting of the Paris City Council, calling on the chamber to designate a nudist park area in the city next summer. Deputy Mayor Bruno Juillard has already expressed support for the proposal.
Within weeks, the U.S. Supreme Court is set to decide whether to hear a major transgender rights case for the first time. The dispute involves which bathroom a Virginia high school student can use. The case involves a 17-year-old transgender student named Gavin Grimm. Grimm was born female but identifies as male and is mounting a legal challenge to gain the right to use the boys' bathroom at his public high school in Gloucester County, Virginia. The local school board is asking the justices to hear its appeal of an April 19th ruling by the Richmond-based 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. That ruling found that transgender students are protected under U.S. laws that bar sex-based discrimination. If the justices choose to hear it, it would be one of the biggest cases of the 2016-17 term.
Pro-life advocates say the Obama administration is once again doing an end run around Congress, using executive power to change policy in a way dozens of GOP lawmakers say appears to be, quote, an attempt to subvert the will of elected representatives. The Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, has proposed a federal regulation that will tell state and local governments how they can and cannot spend Title X money, which is given to states in order to fund family planning services. A number of states have set guidelines that direct the funds to full-service community health centers, rather than Planned Parenthood, which performed nearly 325,000 abortions over the one-year period outlined in its most recent annual report. Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards is praising the rule, saying, quote, the Obama administration is protecting access to health care for millions of people. Not everyone agrees.
Once again, you're going to have this administration that has an unholy alliance with the big abortion industry, protecting them and saying, states, you don't have the right to decide who provides the best services for your women, for women's health issues. We're going to tell you that you cannot make that decision. And you know what? That's wrong.
Yeah, she took a picture of just some water coming out of a faucet, posted it on Twitter, complaining about it. She never imagined what would happen next. Hazel Juco says when she saw discolored water coming from the sink at school, it upset her.
I just took a picture of it, and then fourth hour is my newspaper class, and I went and talked about it with them.
She posted the picture on Facebook and Twitter. A short time later, she got called down to the office at John Glenn High in the Wayne Westland School District.
She told me that I was being suspended for 3 days, OSS, for taking a picture. It's inappropriate use of electronics in the restroom.
Dozens of students protested by tweeting bathroom pictures they took without getting in trouble. I called Wayne Westland Superintendent Dr. Michelle Harmala. She looked into it and says she found out high school administrators made mistakes. For one, they didn't report the water issue to maintenance, so she did.
So I reached out to them. They sent a plumber out right away. We do have a piece of the pipe that leads to the faucet that was corroding and needs to be replaced, so that's underway right now.
Dr. Harmala says the rule against cell phones in bathrooms aims to prevent inappropriate pictures of people, not building issues, and the punishment is inappropriate.
She's going to make sure this out-of-school suspension is taken off your record.
Oh, yes, I'm so happy for that.
You are important. You make a difference. This matters. Everything you do matters. Look out for one another.
lift each other up. That's what this is about. I had to come support y'all because the same way y'all took a stand and stood with me, I had to come out here and stand with y'all. So I appreciate what y'all did.
More and more people taking a stand, or a knee in this case. That includes the entire Indiana Fever basketball team.
I'm proud of y'all. I'm proud of y'all. I'm proud of y'all for doing that together, being in that together. That's big. That's big. It's bigger than basketball, right? Bigger than basketball.
A lot of people died for that American flag.
Store owner Donna DeSalvo is disgusted by the lack of respect and the very real risk. She just reopened her corner market 2 weeks ago after a destructive fire last year. When she saw fire trucks pull up Thursday night around 11:30, she feared the worst.
The first fire, the awning caught on fire, and if you saw those sparks, if my awning was back up there again, it could have set my awning on fire again.
What really happened, 3 young men torched the American flag that used to hang on this utility pole. Store surveillance video shows the moment a man climbed up on a trash barrel and set the flag on fire. Seconds later, pieces of the burning cloth can be seen raining down. From another camera, video of the trio fleeing the scene. Look at the bottom of your screen. At one point, one of the men looks directly at the camera before he runs away.
It's really awful that they would actually target a flag. You can't do that.
A crowd gathered today in Richardsville to watch an American symbol retake flight. On September 11th, an American bald eagle was found struggling along the banks of the Green River. After 2 weeks of rehab from the Broadbent Wildlife Sanctuary, Fitzgerald the eagle was released back into the wild. You're seeing the video right there. Wow, very impressive. Right where he was found by Mike and Patrick Thornton is where he returned.
Instead of flying, he tried to go hide, crawl up the bank and hide behind a bunch of trees.
And we sit there and watched him for a little while and finally figured out something was wrong with him.
Had he not been found, he would have either been attacked and eaten by a predator, or he would have died from this toxicity. He was that sick.
There you go.
Emergency UN Security Council meeting on Syria has wrapped up in New York. It was requested by the United States, Britain and France amid the escalating conflict in the city of Aleppo. The gathering saw a heated exchange between the Russian and American envoys.
There's been a bitter war of words at a specially convened meeting of the UN Security Council over Syria as diplomatic efforts to broker peace gave way to recriminations. Russia, it was suggested several times, may have committed war crimes, especially over last week's bombing of an aid convoy near Aleppo. Washington accuses Moscow of consistently lying over its support for the Assad regime.
When Russia is espousing fiction, we have to call that out. What Russia is sponsoring and doing is not counterterrorism, it is barbarism.
Russia denies attacking the aid convoy, blaming rebels or a US drone. Its ambassador said rebel groups were responsible for the collapse of this month's ceasefire, and bringing peace was now an impossible task. Vitaly Churkin blamed hundreds of armed groups and the US for failing to rein them in. More than 200,000 people in Aleppo have become prisoners of the terrorist groups Jabhat al-Nusra and others, he said. They're trying to use women and children as human shields. Airstrikes are used only against the militants' positions and with laser-guided bombs. The UN Special Envoy said bunker-busting bombs had been used on civilians in Aleppo. Britain's ambassador also held Moscow responsible for their plight.
They are now facing an unprecedented, unrelenting onslaught of cruelty. And it is increasingly clear that it is an onslaught beyond the capabilities of the Syrian Air Force alone. In short, it is difficult to deny that Russia is partnering with the Syrian regime to carry out war crimes.
This heated Security Council meeting saw repeated accusations against Russia. For some, the change in tone marks a new phase, throwing out any remaining hope of reaching a peace deal for Syria.
China has sent more than 40 warplanes to fly over the Miyako Strait in the West Pacific to test its combat ability and carried out a regular patrol in the Air Defense Identification Zone over the East China Sea. An Air Force spokesperson cited safeguarding state sovereignty and national security and safeguarding peaceful development. The open sea exercise involves H-6K bombers, Su-30 fighters, air tankers, and other types of warplanes. They conducted scouting, sudden attack, and air refueling tasks.
The latest drill, the second of its kind this month, is seen as a show of force against Japan amid heightened territorial disputes in the South and East China Seas.
Iran will start manufacturing 3 more missiles in the next few months. Defense Minister Hossein Dehran said the production line for Qadir, Sejil and Khorramshahr missiles would multiply Iran's defensive power. He made the remarks while addressing a plenary session of parliament. The defense minister further pointed to Iran's capability to mass-produce cruise as well as ballistic missiles with both solid and liquid fuel propellants. Brigadier General Dehran said the country is able to design and manufacture missiles with any range and destructive power.
Now, in just 3 to 5 years' time, North Korea could have the technology to mount a nuclear warhead on a missile that could reach as far as Seattle on the U.S. mainland. This is according to the former head of the CIA, Michael Hayden. In an interview with the Japanese daily, Hayden criticized U.S. policies against Pyongyang, saying it's now impossible for the U.S. and Japan to stop the regime and urged Washington to consider alternative plans. Hayden added the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD in South Korea is a must to counter North Korea's provocations.
Hungarian authorities are investigating a mysterious explosion in central Budapest on Saturday night, amid speculation it may have been a deliberate attack on police. 2 officers were injured in the blast on a main thoroughfare in a tourist district of the capital. Unconfirmed local reports speak of a man having been seen attacking the police. One eyewitness has been quoted as saying he saw nails scattered at the scene.
Singapore has unveiled a new mobile app that will allow authorities to send out important alerts to the public during attacks or emergencies. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong launched the SG Secure app as part of a national movement preparing the public to deal with incidents like terrorist attacks. The SG Secure movement urges citizens to remain vigilant and be prepared with skills including first aid measures. In the wake of mounting terrorism threats, Singapore has set up emergency response teams and expanded CCTV coverage of buildings.
Focus on Sweden now. Why? Well, people there being asked to help migrants assimilate into society. Good idea or not? You decide. One charity there has released a video calling on citizens to accept the fact that Sweden has changed irreversibly.
Det finns ingen väg tillbaka. Sverige blir aldrig som det varit. Europa är i förändring. Och Sverige behövs som en trygg plats för människor på flykt.
Det är dags att inse att nya svenskar kommer att ta plats.
Det är inte bara nya svenskar som ska integreras.
Något nytt. Det nya landet.
Jordanian Christian writer Nahat Hatta has been shot dead outside the courthouse where he was standing trial on charges of contempt of religion. He'd been arrested for sharing a caricature on social media, considered offensive by many conservative Muslim Jordanians. Intended to ridicule ISIL fighters' vision of paradise, it shows a jihadist treating God as a servant. Hatta, who'd apologized and said he didn't mean to cause offense, was shot 3 times as he prepared to enter court in Amman. Hit in the head, he died later in hospital. For those close to him, feelings are running high. The Jordanian people must unite to fight against the unjust forces that accuse others of being apostates. The government must take a stern stance towards these dark forces. There have been enough crimes committed against our nation in Yemen, Syria and Iraq. Is that not enough? Jordan can't handle this. Jordan's suffering from the infiltration of these people who are spreading among us.
The disputed leader of the Nigerian Islamist group Boko Haram has resurfaced in a new video after the army claimed he'd been fatally wounded in an airstrike. In the film, Abu Bakr Shekau mocks the army for claiming he'd been killed and says he's happy and in good health. The video is dated September the 25th, but it's not clear when it was recorded. Shekau led a breakaway faction after the main group of Boko Haram declared allegiance to ISIL.
Though the heavy rains that recently hit the Midwest have ended, heavy flooding continues to plague the region. Severe storms killed at least 2 people in Wisconsin and closed Interstate 94 in Minneapolis-St. Paul, Minnesota this week. That rainfall is now rushing south, down the Cedar River towards Cedar Rapids and other cities in northeast Iowa. Iowa Governor Terry Branstad has declared a state of emergency in 13 counties, and the National Guard has been deployed to aid police in rescues and patrols. The river is currently almost 10 feet above flood stage, with waters not expected to recede in some areas until Friday.
Storms back east triggered flooding and swift water rescues. Even animals found themselves trapped in the floodwaters. McCloyd Hageman shows us how one man risked his life to save a stranded deer before it got swept away.
You're hearing people yelling as they watch a deer getting swept away in the Cedar River, knowing there's nothing they can do as the river rages. Moments later, the deer gets stuck here at the 4th Street Bridge, causing quite the spectacle.
My daughter called 911, and then another lady just called the police department. And then the police department said that they couldn't do anything. They don't think they can do anything. She's going to have to just try to swim to shore.
Knowing the deer would eventually get exhausted and die, these men act fast.
Deer was in the water, stuck, baby deer with noticeable wounds, so we just wanted to get the deer out of the water to safety.
Jamad Salas held as this Evansdale man jumped in the water with his life jacket on, strapped in the deer, and then they pulled it to safety, all while keeping a sense of humor.
Hey, don't forget about me.
It feels good, man, to see the city coming together in the midst of something like this, man, to come together.
Not knowing what to do with the deer, the 3 men decided to keep hold of it, drive it out of town, and then let it free.
You gonna ride in the back with it?
So to see Waterloo coming together, it's a beautiful thing.
Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump will recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital if he's elected. The promise was made during a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It marks a potential dramatic shift in U.S. policy, with it being a highly contentious issue between Israel and the Palestinians. Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton also met the Israeli premier, where she reportedly stressed that a strong and secure Israel is vital to the United States because of shared strategic interests and common values. With latest opinion polls showing Clinton's lead has narrowed to only 2 percentage points over her rival, the focus is now on the first of 3 televised presidential debates. An estimated 100 million viewers are expected to tune in for Monday night's face-off in New York.